Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Glad to have you on board here and hope you're enjoying your day wherever you're going. Maybe you're going about your work. It is a beautiful day here out in central Montana. Cold, of course, but 4,000 feet elevation. What would you expect? So please take some time and make sure you sign up for the podcast. We'd love to have you on board with that. And also make sure you take a few moments and drop me a line and tell us about what you think the podcast is doing. Give us some ideas and what you would like to have done for future podcasts. And even if you have criticisms, we'd be welcome to hear them. How do you get a hold of me? Well, it's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. So why don't we get right to it today? This was a question that was sent to me some time ago, and I'm getting around to it now. It was basically, what are some do's and don'ts for starting your own wildlife control business or PCO business? So I'm going to only discuss 5. So think of it as the 5 do's or don'ts. Whatever you do, you can always avoid the opposite, right? So basically 5 ideas or concepts to keep in mind before you start your own wildlife or pest control business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's an important question because maybe you're listening to this podcast and maybe you've done some fur trapping or maybe a little bit of pest control for somebody, and since, maybe things that are, trapping someone's mice, and you're like, I need a career, I need to do something with my life, and you're thinking about this pest control gig. And so this will give you some ideas to think about so that you avoid some of the pitfalls, because there are a lot of them when starting your own business. There's an old saying that says, why do we have education? Because making mistakes is too painful. So the goal of education is to try to avoid common pitfalls and mistakes that can occur in whatever activity you're involved in. So you're learning from the experiences and trials and pain and sweat and tears of other people. So that way you can improve your success. I can tell you right now, there are people today that are doing quite well, and part of the reason they're doing quite well is they're smart and hardworking and that sort of thing. But they've been able to leverage the training and experience of people that started early in the industry. So they didn't make those mistakes. And when you have an industry that's growing the way the wildlife control industry has grown, more people are more comfortable hiring it. It becomes more common. So, why don't we get started? What is principle number 1 of a do or don't that you should consider before starting your own business? I think probably the biggest one to start right off, and I think this is a priority number 1, not just an order one, but really a priority one, which would be, why are you wanting to go into your own business? I think you really have to think deep and ask some tough questions about yourself, and that is, why do you want to have your own business? Let me illustrate here. Are you wanting to go into your own business for the money? Now, I'm not judging you here. It's not about, he's accusing me of being greedy. I'm not judging you here. I will if you want me to, but I'm not judging here. I'm asking you to deeply think about what your reasoning is. Why are you wanting to start your business? Because that's going to be an important component of what maintains your business. What's going to keep you going during the difficult times? That is what you have to consider. Why are you doing it? So is it money? Is it time? Are you wanting more flexibility with your life that you think that being self-employed will provide you? Are you looking for self-determination? That is, you want the ability to control your destiny. Are you doing it because you don't like taking orders from people? I had a friend of mine who was used to say he had a pretty successful wildlife control business and sold it. And he said, and so he was working for this other company for a while. And, about a year or so later, he finished his contract with that company. And I find out he's back self-employed again. And I'm like, well, I thought you sold your company. He says, well, yeah, I did. And I said, well, I thought you were working for the other guy. He said, yeah, I was. He says, I just finally realized I just don't like taking orders from other people. I'm just a bad employee. Well, I was a little stunned by that kind of a comment, but he knew where he was at. And he understood that part of being an employee is taking orders, that you are learning, that you are taking direction from someone else. And so the reality is that some people get into self-employment because they just don't like taking orders from people. Now, understand, you may think you're in charge, right? And in one sense you are, but the customer is telling you what to do. Now, you can decide, I'm not doing that. But to think that you are, this idea that you are completely in self-control with your business, that's kind of a little bit of a myth, And so what you often see with people who have that level of freedom that you think they have freedom is you often forget or overlook the sweat and pain in 80-hour weeks that they may have done 30 years ago. And so now you're looking at someone who is able to reap the benefits of the hard work that they put in a long time ago. And so don't think that self-employment is easy and that it's just easy money. I mean, there's a lot of mythology out there, the rich are screwing people over and, they're just able to oppress people. And I wish more people in some ways would become self-employed, because then they would realize just how hard it is. And it's not for everybody. So I'm not here to try to discourage you from starting your own business per se. What I want you to do is have a very sober assessment on what your motivation is for starting your own business. Because if you're in it for the money, you may find out there's a lot of money there, or you may find out there isn't as much money as you think, or that it's taking you longer to get the money you think. Because one of the challenges with the wildlife control field and the pest control field is that you make more money by working more. It's not an expandable business in the sense, or a leveraging business in the sense that if you write a book or create a widget, once the book is finished, you can make money on selling that book without really adding any extra effort to yourself, because other people will sell it for you. I sell books, and I have books on Amazon, and some of them are ebooks, because I've taken some of my books and converted them into ebooks. But those books are selling whether I'm sleeping or not. That's not going to happen in wildlife control. It's a service-based industry. So you only make more money by doing more work, and you can't multiply yourself. So it's not an ability where you can simply create a widget and have someone else manufacture it, and you're getting a commission on that. So it's a fundamentally different field in that regard. That doesn't mean you can't make some serious money in wildlife control. You can, but you're going to work for it. Okay? So first rule, what is your motivation? What are you trying to get out of this? I've seen people in wildlife control work, and I've wondered, why are you in business? You would make more money working at McDonald's. And the fact of the matter is, the reason they're in this wildlife control business is because their ego won't let them work at McDonald's, which is sad, because their ego is costing them money and a better life. Okay? So rule number one, what are you doing it for? Rule number two, or do number two, find out if your spouse, primarily this is a male-dominated field, girlfriend, whatever the case may be, are they on board with it? Now, I want to be very serious about this. This This is serious stuff. Don't just simply flippantly ask them, do you mind if I start my own business? Or what do you think if I'm starting my own business? Because they're just generally going to tell you what they think you want to hear. So like a kid who comes home with their drawing and everyone claims it's beautiful when it's just awful, right? You want to find out what whether they have your full support. You need to find out, are they going to give you the full support? Because here's the problem. Self-employment, there's no punching the clock. See, when you're working for somebody else and you punch that clock, as soon as you punch the clock at the end of the day, you're done. You can forget about everything related to that job. When you're self-employed, the job never leaves you. You're thinking about it all the time. Now, you're going to be asking, did I remember to close that trap? Did I remember to send out that invoice? Did I remember to take care of payroll? Did I take care of taxes? Did I get the oil changed in the vehicle? Do I need to market this person? Do I need to order more business cards? Do I need to get more paperwork? Plus all the regular things you have to do in life. What happens is that you can find that you're being self-employed. It can consume you if you let it. You need to be sure that your spouse is completely on board with you. And that means they will understand when your 8-hour day turns into a 12-hour day or a 14-hour day. And that you may do this for 2 consecutive weeks. Because I can tell you, things can get a bit old and people can really strain their relationships when their business consumes them. Because you may find that you thought all this cash was flowing into your wallet and you're making all kinds of money, and then you find out that you're not making all that kind of money. And you quit your job and whatever the case may be, and now you've got a mortgage or rent to pay, or maybe a car payment or a truck payment. Whatever the case may be, you may find out you've got to keep hustling because you're barely keeping afloat. Ask your spouse, ask your mate, will they help you? At least if they're not, I'm not talking about them going on a ladder and helping you on a roof or something. I'm saying is having someone being willing to pick up the phone when a phone call comes, taking care of some of that office work is going to be important. And if they're not willing to do that, are they willing to be a self-employed widow? Because that's what you may be for a while. Now, your business may be awesome. Your business may take off and you're making plenty of money, and that. I'm just saying, there's going to be some of you out there that start your own business and you're going to find out, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. That's something you need to find out. You need to have that really truthful, forthright, recognizing the horror that may be in front of you, because then if it's less than that, then all things are good, because you don't want it to cost your marriage starting your own business. And it can be very, very stressful. Number 3, make sure you understand the law in your particular state or location. That means the business law, the law, licenses required to do wildlife control or pest control. What type of insurance is required? Do you have to have a business license for the community you're in? Can you run a business out of the location where you're living? Do you understand that if you're using your personal vehicle for business work, your vehicle insurance is not appropriate for that? You have to get commercial vehicle insurance. Did you know that? Do you have liability insurance? Even if your state does not require liability insurance, you're probably going to need to have it to protect your assets. Greater risk opportunity for reward brings greater risk. So you are going to have a lot more expenses than what you would imagine. So when this is the problem, when people think that all these rich people are ripping people off and, oh, they're making so much money and I don't get paid enough and blah, 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 the Bernie Sanders attitude of the world. Often because they've never ran a business. Bernie Sanders has never run a business in his life. So he has no clue about regulation. He has no idea about any of that stuff. He's never had to make payroll. So all these, Gen Xers and Gen Yers and Gen Zers and what have you, millennials, who have bought into this sort of socialistic mantra that we just need to get up and share and everything else. They don't understand because no one's taught. They've been shielded too much. No one's told them about the realities of business. That is, the payroll taxes that you're going to be hitting with, the workman's comp issues, the liability insurance, the vehicle insurance, license fees, record keeping, taxes, all of those types of things. Then you have to do continuing education in some of these fields. If you're doing pest control, you have to do continuing education. That's costing you money because you have to take time out of your day to do more training. Now, you should get that back. But when you're first starting out, that may be tough, difficult. Or if you're well into your career, you're like, well, what more am I going to really be learning? All of that matters. Then you have sick time. See, when you're working for somebody else full time, you generally have sick time. So you're going to be paid to do nothing. When you're self-employed, there's none of that. This is something I hope you realize. So finding out what the laws and rules and regulations are is something that you definitely have to consider. Number 4, investigate your market. This is hard, and you should do it soberly, and you should take some serious time determining whether you have a market suitable for you to run a business. Let me be blunt. You do not work for poor people. Poor people have no money. Poor people can't afford you. You have to work for people who have money, who are willing to pay you to do the work. It's really that simple. So if you're living in a town of 3,000 people and the average income in the town is $25,000, it's doubtful you're going to have any opportunity to do work. Now, are there exceptions to that? Absolutely there is exceptions to that. But maybe your town is very poor, but maybe it's a vacation community with a lot of wealthy people that come in for the summer to, play yachtsmen on the lake or something, or just sort of find themselves out in your area, and then they leave. Those are the people that you're going to work for, even though they live somewhere else. Maybe you're in a situation where you are within driving distance of a major market. How far away is it? Do those people have money? Is there enough work? How much competition do you have? Now, competition can be helpful because you want customers who call a few companies to get an idea of what the prices are. And that you already have the ability to set your market prices at what they're doing, even without doing all the extra research. That can be helpful. Don't just simply go in and undercut and think being the cheapest is always going to be the best. Don't go there. But you're going to need to understand, what is your competition? What kind of revenue does the area have? What kind of wealth is available? Because you're going to need people who can afford to hire you. Now you're like, I don't know where to find all that information. The government collects a lot of data. Go online, go to the Census Bureau, check out your area, and find out what the government says is the average income out there. Do the market research. Ask people. Don't just ask your friends. Find out, is there really a market? Because you can get a little skewed by thinking if you had, you got a few people asking you quickly to do this or that, that can be problematic because it may be skewed. You need to be sure that there's a real market in your area. Now, understand that sometimes you can grow a market, but are you offering the services that people are going to have? Where I live, most people just pull a gun out of the house and shoot whatever they need to shoot. It would be very hard to run a wildlife control business here in Lewistown, Montana. That's if the state allowed me to do that. Okay? So that is something that you're going to have to really do some research on, because you may start a company and go through all this work and realize there's no money. Because wildlife control is more than just simply trapping animals. The money is really in the repairs. That's where the money is. Because a lot of your contractors won't do these small jobs. But again, even doing the contracting type work, some states are very rigid about even doing anything. Sealing off a squirrel hole can be considered being a contractor, and that may require a whole host of other regulations and licenses. Remember, what was the point is? Number 3, do you know your laws in your area? That's number 3. So look up census.gov, find out the area, contact the business community in your area, ask some business owners, how many apartment buildings do you have in your area? Are you wanting to go commercial? Are you able to do wildlife control and pest control? That can be very helpful, because there's always more money in pest control than there is in wildlife control. I strongly recommend anyone who's doing wildlife control, get your pest control license. Do whatever it takes. Get that license. Well, I'm not interested in using poisons. I don't want to do. I'm telling you, get the license. Even if you don't want to use it, get the license. You may find out when you're tired of climbing your 32-foot ladder or your 40-foot ladder and you're starting to get into your 50s, you may want to find out that, maybe I do need to convert over to start spraying for some bugs. The beauty of pest control is the regular service calls. We don't have that really in wildlife control. I had customers, I had them once, never saw them again. And the reality is, if they listened to what I told them to do, they would never need to call me again. Now, there's exceptions, things like moles and maybe voles and animals that go into their grass and that sort of thing. But for the most part, there is no reason for people to have to call us back. If they keep their house in good shape, it's not a problem. Pest control is different. Bugs return. The termite guy who came to my house and did termite work. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. They were getting after they finished the work and I paid them for that. Then I had to pay them a fee every year to quote unquote warranty the work. And they were supposed to come in. That was supposed to include an annual visit. They didn't come. It wasn't until I had another swarm that I had to call them and say, hey, I got another swarm out here, and they came out and then had to do some more work. But I was paying them $100, I think it was like $100, $125 a year to do nothing. Think about that. You have 1,000 clients at over $100 a year, and you don't even show up to do your inspection of that, your annual inspection. That's a staggering amount of money for doing nothing. Okay? Get your pest control license if you're really serious about doing it. You will find that opens up a lot more flexibility for you and gives you a lot more leeway and a cushion to help make sure you're maintaining the likelihood your business is going to be successful. Number 5, I'm going to encourage you to start slow. There's nothing wrong with starting part-time, keeping your day job, doing some of those small works, getting a feel for your market, starting to buy a little bit of equipment, getting your name out there, and that's something I forgot to mention. Pick a good name. Think long and hard about it. Make sure you're not stepping on somebody else's trademark. I'm going to encourage you to consider having a business name not associated with your own name. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a business, Vantassel's Wildlife Control. Nothing wrong with that. But here's the problem with it, though. If someone hates you personally, they're going to hate your company. Having a personal identification on your company, I had my company name was Wildlife Removal Service, wasn't tied to my name. So if I sold it, it wasn't tied to me. Now, if you're in an area where your family has a long-standing history in the community and you're well respected and, maybe your grandfather was mayor or whatever the case may be, then trading on that name may be an advantage for you and may be worth it, right? But think hard about your business name. Think about your logo, because you want to build that brand, and it takes years to do that. And you want something that you're not going to be ashamed of in 10 years, because you have to be thinking long term about this. So going back to point number 5, start slow. Get your work. Get your liability insurance. Just start off doing some small jobs, finding out if you really like doing this. But remember, the transition from part-time to full-time is a big jump. Make sure you're developing some cash flow. Make sure that you have enough in the bank. Try to buy as much of the equipment as you can before you go full-time, so that way you have all that paid off before you're moving into that full-time status. Time your business for full-time. I would recommend that people, if you're looking to jump full-time, time it so that you're going full-time toward the spring, because that's going to give you the best opportunity to get your name out there. I had a friend of mine who had a very successful business in another state. He moved to another state, and he suffered. He's a pretty sharp guy, hard worker, really skilled, really knew his stuff, and he struggled. It was hard for him the first couple of years to get his name out, partly because the population area that he was in was quite small. Remember that population thing I told you about? And it took him a while to find his niche. Well, this year, things have really exploded for him, which is great. And that can happen for you, but you have to hold on enough. I'm going to encourage you to probably think about 2 years. But if you're doing part-time work, for a few years, well, obviously that may shrink your time for going, the amount of time you need to convert to full-time, but that you're going to be really successful in that full-time. But there's going to come a point where you're just not able to keep a day job and do all this part-time work. What can help you is that if you're doing part-time work and you're getting really stressed for time, just raise your prices a little bit. And then keep socking away your money so that when you make that full-time conversion, you're ready to go. And crunch the numbers. Just, sometimes if your motivation is money, remember, make sure that you're going to have a good chance of getting what you want to get. Make sure you keep checking in with your spouse. How's this still going? Because it's very easy to get full on into your business and destroy your marriage. Destroy the relationship with your kids. And ask yourself, is it worth it? Sometimes people are workaholics because they're running away from something. And that's something you're going to have to think long and hard about. So I'm getting heavy here, but this is serious business. No pun intended. You're going to have to think long and hard about what you're doing here. So let's go over those 5 do's and don'ts. Number 1, be very clear about why you want to have your own business. Do that gut check. What are your real goals are? Write them down. Think about them for a while. Don't make a flippant answer on this. Number 2, make sure your spouse and family are on board with this. Women need to feel security. So if you're going from I've seen people go from great jobs and then go to self-employment and like, what in the world are you doing? Hey, you got to make sure the spouse is on board. Because remember that health insurance? When you're self-employed, you got to pay for it. It's not your boss anymore. Number 3, know the laws. All the laws, and there's a lot to know. Number 4, investigate your market and competition. Develop a good, you don't have to do a business plan. There's a book out there that says, the 1-page business plan. I would encourage you to look at it. You don't have to have, the idea is it just helps you write out some of your bigger issues that you need to think through. You don't have to have this multi-page business plan, but you need to be asking yourself the question, what is it? Why do I think I'm going to be successful? And then you got to think about what are the threats that may make me not successful? What happens if you fall off the ladder and really hurt yourself? It can happen, right? Do you have a good business name? That's part of that competition thing. Are you going to be able to find a niche that you're going to be able to fulfill? And are you going to make a living off of that? And then lastly, I'm going to encourage you to start slow. Nothing wrong with that. If you have a family that has a long history in contracting and self-employment, you may be able to start pretty fast, maybe go full-time right away because you have that support network. But if you don't have that support network, I'm going to encourage you to start slow. Take a drive, find somebody who does wildlife control on the other end of the state. Ask to do a ride along with them. Being part of an association or finding some people. That way you're not in your immediate area because they're going to be your competition, but you want to reach out and learn about the ins and outs of the business in your own state. And you can do that oftentimes with people on the other end of the state because you're not going to be in competition with each other. Build those relationships. You'll find them be incredibly helpful. Follow those 5 points, and you will improve the chances of having a successful business. It's not a guarantee, but prepare yourself. The more you learn, the more you study, then you finally have to make a decision. Are you going to go full-time, or are you going to stay part-time, or maybe walk away from it entirely? Do what is right for yourself and for your family to make sure that you're going to be prosperous. Hope you found that helpful. I'm Stephen Vantassel, Wildlife Control Consultant. You are listening to the podcast, Living the Wildlife. Why? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. This is part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Hey, take a few moments, definitely subscribe to our podcast. Drop me a line at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Tell us how we're doing. We'd love to have you, love to hear from you. Get some ideas on what you'd like to have for future podcasts, of course. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking about what interests me. Today's podcast was based on a question I got from a listener. Many thanks to you. You know who you are. And till next time, take care.